Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with DNA upgrade specialist and coach to top entrepreneurs and leaders, Helen Müller. Helen's focus is helping top entrepreneurs and leaders fulfill their greatest potential. The You, Me, and Happiness program focuses heavily on heightened awareness and her unique ability to communicate remotely with human DNA, giving her clients high-performance output and an accelerated growth incomparable to anything else. She is also the author of 4 Keys to Happiness. Her journey in entrepreneurship started by selling biscuits on the family farm in South Africa and took off after being introduced to LURN Inc. and coach Willie Laney. She enjoys a lifestyle of wildly intuitive traveling and is currently working on research, remaining passionately involved in coaching entrepreneurs and spreading happiness all around. Enjoy this interview. Thank you again for taking a minute out. And before we get into your life, you have lots of interesting things going on. I want to know, how did you survive COVID? The last couple of years has been quite a thing for everybody. How did you get through it, and how has it changed the way that you approach, not only the way that you live your life, but that you approach business now?
Well, I was kind of distracted, to be honest, with the COVID. Firstly, because I am in Portugal and I'm in a process of getting my citizenship here. So just on a practical way, I was kind of more focused on, sorting that out and not on the problem of COVID at that time. So that's just on a practical level. On business side, for my business that time, I was doing really well because, I don't know, I think it was that contrast of the whole world going into this chaos and kind of, going that way inspired me to, provide the solution. And that's actually where I started really focusing on my DNA upgrades at that time. Before that, I was mostly doing the coaching and the happiness fulfillment and working with some of my energy techniques. But I went more fully into the DNA upgrades at that time because more people were kind of needing it at that time. So for me, business-wise, that was kind of, it was really good. And also especially because people were at home and forced to be at home. So that, it's kind of worked out really well for me. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it certainly does. Yeah, because everybody has their different story of getting through. And it's fascinating how there's been silver linings and there's been ways of getting through and just revelations, because this has been a big deal. And I think that people are fatigued and tired of talking about it. But I think it's important up front to acknowledge that we've all of us, everybody on the planet's lived through quite a thing with COVID. And we all have our successes, we have our struggles, but I think it's great to kind of have that be the starting place. And I'm going to move right into my next question to kind of understand what you do specifically. I want to put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids at a career day, let's say 3rd graders, and one of them looks up at you and says, "What do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
Nobody's ever asked me that. That's a really good question. Okay. Let me see how I answer that to a 3rd grader. I would use an example. I would say, I would ask them, tell me something that you're afraid of. I would ask them, tell me something that you're afraid of. And if they say, I'm afraid of snakes, for example, so I would say, well, something that I do is, if you're afraid of something, I help you to get rid of that fear and to no longer live in that fear. I would maybe give an example like that. Because, they wouldn't know what is removing mental blocks. They wouldn't know what that is. But a fear is a good example of a mental block.
When you say DNA upgrade specialist, what does that specifically mean? How would I understand that?
Well, what I do is it's a communication technique. So I remove mental blocks with this technique called DNA upgrade, and it's built on the science of epigenetics. So if you think about, we all have these mental blocks, but how it works is when you receive electrical signals from the outside, you then perceive it with your 5 senses, and that then releases chemicals into the bloodstream, which then interacts with your genes, and that makes you act out. So, say for example, in the, using the example of the snake, you're scared of a snake. I'm not scared of snakes, but you might see a snake, and then because you perceive it in this fearful way, you will then react in a fearful way because of the hormones and the things that's released. So when I do a DNA upgrade, I bypass that process because you perceive with your five senses, but you interpret with your mind. And that's why people have mental blocks, right? So when I do the DNA upgrade, I remove these mental blocks, but I do it with kind of bypassing the information that comes from the mind, that limited mind, and I use information that comes from your higher consciousness, not your limited mind programming that you were taught, I would say like in your first 7 years. So I bypass that and I send new information to the genes, and then your genes get expressed in a different way. So like an upgraded information. That's what's called a DNA upgrade.
That's interesting. And, I'm kind of fascinated with the idea of DNA. My 18-year-old son is on the autism spectrum, and the only thing that we biologically definitively know about where he's at is that he has an extra piece of genetic material on his 15th chromosome. And that has led to developmental delays and to where he is. So I'm always fascinated with how just a very little bit can affect any human being.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. I maybe ask you a question, because I always kind of ask this as well, is, what people think of their DNA, because I think a lot of people don't really think about what it does or what it can do. And what happens, and I think, a big reason why this is, why people don't know a lot about it is because they still believe that genes control our biology, right? A lot of people say, for example, if you have this genes, then you're supposed to be like this. I'm not saying your specific example, but it could also be that belief that, because of this extra genetic material, your son is now autistic. That's kind of a determinist belief, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you don't have any power, right? It's like this, so now you have to deal with it. But that's kind of based on the Newtonian science, where people believe, like, say your mother had the cancer gene, now you have the cancer gene. Like, that type of thinking. But there's a valid science since the 1990s, which is called epigenetics. You might want to check that out. Maybe it could be useful for you, or for your son as well. It's called epigenetics, and epi means above the genes. And how that works is now, my DNA upgrade also, builds on this science, epigenetics, because your genes is just a blueprint. In other words, Joe, you can have the cancer gene and I can have the cancer gene. Or you might also have the autistic gene and I might also have the autistic gene. But it doesn't mean that we have to express it. So, because your genes is just it's a blueprint.
I think I understand what you're saying, and I'm gonna, and this is my interpretation. There's been a larger part of me as he's gotten older that has deviated from treating him like he has something that would be called a deficiency. And I've always kind of treated him like he's neurotypical, and I have always kind of allowed him to do things that maybe other people wouldn't think is okay, or they would think he's not up to it, or, he's just not at that point, like riding a bike at a certain age or doing certain things. And the more he gets older, it's like there's expectations that I don't want to, reduce for him because of what I have been told on paper as a part of his genetic code. Is that kind of what you're saying? There's a part of this process that if you treat it like it is what it is. But if you go to another place, you can actually help alleviate it and elevate to a different level.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, and you actually also have power, to influence. What's your son's name? Sorry, if I may ask.
Oh, it's Miles, after the trumpeter, Miles Davis.
Miles.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Miles. Yeah. So, I mean, you have that power to also kind of make a difference in Miles's life exactly because of that. And the thing is, Joe, you can prove with science all of these things now. It's just sometimes people don't have access to, access to this information. They don't know. But there is scientists and physicists have already proven like lots of these things. It's just a matter of that. But it's more, it's like a disempowering science versus an empowering science, if you think about it. So you rather want to have that power, right? You want to have you want to choose. You don't want somebody else to tell you what you should believe just because, why? Because they believe it. That's not a reason why you should believe it. So it's exactly like that. And I think a lot of things has to do with how you define things. I always say, even when I have to go to a doctor, right? I try not to go to doctors, but if I have to go to a doctor or like a skin therapist or anything, even for a facial or something, I always tell them, I'm sure you can, from their perspective, they can tell me what is wrong, or they can put a label on something, right? But I specifically ask, I don't want to know that, because as soon as you know that information, it goes into your mind, right, and it starts affecting you. And if you think about growing up, you got all this information from books, from people, from experiences, and it's kind of the information that you got from when you were in the womb to age 7. That's kind of forming the basis of what you believe in. Even if now you think you want to believe different things, that still has a big power on you. So I don't like when people label things like autism. I'll never do that. I was just seeing somebody who, they talk about themselves as being, actually it was a friend that I thought, he talked of himself as being bipolar, because he's been diagnosed bipolar and this and that and the other thing. I said, there's nothing wrong with you. I'm not going to label you as these things just because somebody's going to, because people can also be wrong,
Yeah. Yeah.
You can be wrong. Now you believe this. You go and research all the, all the symptoms and all the things, and then before you know it, you've got more problems than you need, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It produces a lot of clutter and clatter for sure. So let's go back in your life where you were born and raised, and kind of what your childhood was like to give you these seeds of motivation to be who you are today.
I was born in South Africa and on a farm. And I was one of 3 children. I was a middle child, or I am a middle child. And yeah, I grew up in nature, so I spent a lot of time in nature, but I always felt alone on the farm because of my ideas. And I had the reason why I can also do these upgrades is because I've been able to communicate with consciousness naturally, if I can say that, from when I was a child. So I would have these conversations with consciousness when I would go walking in the mountains. And I was always very aware of the presence, as if it's almost like a magic friend, but, doesn't like a magic friend. And I would just kind of build that relationship from when I was a kid. So I'm kind of grateful for that, where I never felt that I belonged in my family. And literally it took me up until about maybe a month ago, and I just came back from South Africa now after a 5-week visit there, and it just really came to a beautiful place now with my family. But up until this point, I really felt like it was a struggle for me. I felt like I didn't belong. I left school, I finished my high school and I went to America, and I thought, I'm never going to go back. I said, I'll be like doing what my parents wanted me to do while I'm under their roof, show respect to everything, like live how they want me to live. But as soon as I'm free, I'm going to go out and do my thing. And then I left, but I had to go back to study. My parents wanted me to get a degree, and I had to go back. And but after that, I just traveled again, and I was looking for this answer to happiness, because when I was 16, I had, what some people would call an out-of-body experience, and it was like, my body was completely out of, I was looking kind of down on earth, and I thought, well, this doesn't make sense, how we live on earth, what we do. I couldn't see the point of all this stuff. So, and then after that, I thought, well, I need to find out what existence is all about, because how else am I going to live now? It had to make sense to me. And I kind of reverse engineered my life. And I thought, okay, what do people want at the end of their life? Or, what's the kind of the realization? If people want that fulfillment, right? You hear about this all the time, they lived their life, they had this, they had that, they made all the money, but then at the end, they realized they were never really happy. They never really understood who they were and what they were and what their purpose was for being on earth. So I thought, like, if I first get that answer, however long that might take me, then I'll be sorted, right? Then whatever else I do have time for after that would be like a bonus. And that's exactly what I did. So I kind of traveled also, I would say, to escape my family in a way. But at the same time, kind of searching for this answer, right? Or I would say like searching for myself, if I would say that. And then it took me about 9-10 years before I found that answer. And I then started building my business from there and kind of wrote a book, built a business, and here we are today.
So who has consistently been kind of a hero for you, someone that you've admired?
Consistently. I would say Elon Musk. But okay, that's not forever. That's just since I knew about Elon Musk. But I know he's kind of a big figure now, but I really think I don't know. I can elaborate on that. But consistently before that, I would say Prem Rawat. He is a man from India who kind of helped me, kind of find that inner peace.
You may have already answered it. If you could meet and talk to anybody alive on the planet right now, who would it be?
Elon Musk, probably at this point. Yes, Elon Musk.
What is it that motivates you to do what you do? I mean, what is it every day you wake up? We always have these things that we want to do with our day. What is it that motivates you to get through the day and be a success, to do what you want to do?
I think because I've already, kind of accomplished my biggest goal in my life, now I feel very compelled. It's like it's like a fire that from that first moment when I, knew what I wanted to do and when I started this union happiness thing, and it's just like a burning fire inside me. I can never stop it. It's like it's continuously consuming my mind space. So, it's just like kind of to pass that on to humanity while I'm still alive. And I feel it's not even like something I have to think about. It just comes automatically, like just to do as much as I can, as efficient as I can, to pass this on to other people.
Yeah, so let me ask you this. At the end of the day, how do you quantify a good day for you? What is it that makes you satisfied at the end of a good day?
I've extracted as much joy from each moment that I could. And that includes me waking up early, and that includes me having helped somebody during the day, and having taken care of myself in the best way, kind of the things I put in my body, but essentially the joy that I extract out of each segment of the day.
Based on the life that you've lived, the roads you've gone down, the wisdom that you've gained, I'm going to ask you this. If you have a dream tonight, you run into the younger version of yourself, say in your 20s, and you could give that version of you a piece of advice based on what you've learned and what you've lived through, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Sure, there's a couple of things. Oh my goodness, how much time do you have? No, I'm kidding. There's some practical things that are, big things, and then I'm going to, on the other levels. I would say that on a practical side, I would say start investing, early in life. I'm talking about like financial investments, like learn about investments, and I would say make that kind of a priority, because even if you don't know what you want to do with your life, I don't know if we've got lots of young listeners, but even if you don't know what you want to study or what you want to just use your money and invest it. Because by the time that you do know that, you're going to need that money to start a business or kind of do what you want to do. I would say that kind of financial knowledge, that knowledge is important. And of course, if you can kind of look at the trends as well, when you're younger, to see, okay, fine, learn something that you could do online, that type of thing. So I would say that's quite important if you can kind of see where things are going at an early age, rather than, it's important to follow your passion, but I think along those earlier stages, there's some other decisions that you can make and then still follow your passion. So that's the one thing. And on a different level, what would I say? I said, don't believe what other people believe. Make your own way, find your own way. If you can kind of learn that, and that's a word, all about worthiness. And I think when people always ask me what's the biggest mental block that most of my clients have, or in general, it all comes down to, at the end of the day, like worthiness, self-worth. And I think if we can learn from a young age that all those things that we're scared of, that, when you believe something that somebody else says about you, or somebody else reflects to you, something that you feel insecure about, it's so easy for us to believe them, and then we don't go digging further because we're so scared that we will find out that might be true. Somebody says you're not good enough or something, whatever it is. And then you don't go deeper because you're scared that might be true, but it's so, it's not, it will never be true. And that's the whole thing with worthiness on earth. It will never be true. But we keeping these loops of like not valuing ourselves throughout our lives. So I think I would say to my younger self, only what you believe is true about yourself is true.
Well said. So what's been one of the best client responses that you've gotten for the work that you've done?
Let me think. There's been many good ones. Okay, I must think of the best one. You have some good questions. You have some difficult questions as well. You have to think about it.
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, I would say, I would give you two ones. One for me was, when I started doing the dinner upper, just from a skills perspective, somebody, kind of explained it really well when they said, it's like they get remote access to their body. So for me, that kind of really helped me with my own technique. So that, but yeah, that was the most accurate way that a person really described what I do on an energetic level. But then results, of course, from connecting to the higher self, that has always been, for me, the biggest one, is when people just kind of find themselves. I would say that the first time when somebody expressed it like that, where they just met that part of themselves, to me, that was the most significant. But then, there's been so many, very tangible results as well. But yeah, that was a good one for me.
So everyone out there has a perception of you, an idea of who they think you are, your family, your friends, your clients, but you live your life. You have a perception of yourself. Who do you think you are?
I think I am. Well, I'm going to answer you. I'll truthfully answer you. I know that I'm consciousness. I know that I am an individuated unit of consciousness, part of the larger consciousness system. That's kind of so that's my answer.
Helen, thank you for opening up. Thanks for taking a minute out. Before we leave, I want to get to the good business of your life. Where is the best place for everybody to go to learn more about you and your businesses, your services? Where can they go?
They can go to youmeandhappiness.com.
Perfect. Helen, thank you again. Best of luck. Have a great 2023. And again, thank you for opening up and giving me some of your time today. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Joe. It was lovely speaking to you. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, music, and more from around the globe. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.